Hello, this is Talking Europe on France 24. Now, in just a couple of weeks' time, COVID permitting, the Winter Olympics will open in Beijing. A celebration of sporting exploits, yes, but the event will also be taking place amid a charged political atmosphere. Now, here in Europe, Lithuania, the first EU state to join the United States, United Kingdom and Australia in declaring it would stage a diplomatic boycott of the Games, citing human rights concerns in China. Well, the EU's overall relationship with China is the subject of our debate this week, for which I'm joined by two members of the European Parliament. We have with us Lithuanian MEP Petras Austrevicius from the centrist Renew Europe group and the Vice Chair of the Parliament's International Trade Committee, Juliu Winkler from Romania and the centre-right European People's Party. Hello to both of my guests.
Hello, thank you for having us.
Mr. Austrevicius, I'd like to come to you first as a Lithuanian member of the European Parliament. Your country has really drawn the ire of Beijing for several reasons. Firstly, it withdrew from the so-called 17+1 talks of Central and Eastern European states plus China. Also, Lithuania has allowed an official Taiwanese office to be opened in Vilnius under the name of Taiwan, which has annoyed China. It prefers these offices to be called Taipei. It sees it as a challenge to its one China policy. So, Mr. Austrevicius, the question to you. This has all brought all kinds of consequences for Lithuanian businesses. Why take this stand?
Well, the Lithuanian government made this decision in full respect to one China, two systems principle. But the Chinese side didn't agree with this. I believe, we are seeing kind of the Chinese side interpretation on our decision, which is completely in compliance with the EU principles towards China. And the Taiwanese representative office is about the expanding economic and cultural ties. It's not about the diplomatic recognition. So that's why we made repeatedly, again and again, our position on Taiwanese representative office. But those extreme political sensitivities from Beijing, I think they indicate something else, something different from the Taiwanese representative office. I think we are witnessing growing China's global influences and ambitions, which are translated into some very coercive political and economic policies towards single member states.
First of all, let us just establish commonly that the relations between EU and China are at a very, very disturbingly low point. I think it's the low point if we look back for the last 10 or 15 years at least. This is a situation which came from complex origins. Today, what we can see is economic coercion by China. This is a fact. We see that Chinese are impacting corporate behavior of companies, not only Lithuanian, but also companies along the various supply chains. And we can see that, China punishes governments which are not in line with some red lines, which we know very well. Chinese red lines about Hong Kong, about Taiwan, about Xinjiang, about forced labor, and about human rights. So this is a situation from which we have to try to find the way out. I think that our engagement is in low point. I see that for the European Parliament, for example, has practically no engagement, no contact with the Chinese authorities, with Chinese official representatives, which is not good. I see the Chinese ambassador finishing in Brussels to the European institutions. Finishing his mandate last December, and I see no new ambassador from China being designated to Brussels, which is also not a good news for dialogue. So we need some solutions, we need engagement, and we need some strong European Union tools which we can produce in the near future.
Well, now, under the German presidency of the EU Council a couple of years ago, an EU-China investment pact was drawn up. The strategy by Angela Merkel, who was then in charge, improve economic ties with China and then encourage human rights improvements on other matters from the inside, so to speak. Olaf Scholz, the new Chancellor, has indicated he wants to revive this. Julio Winkler, just to return to you, do you agree with Mr. Scholz?
I would say yes, in principle, I agree with him. I think we need an EU-China investment agreement. I think that we need a rules-based approach between the two giants, because we both are giants of global trade and global economy. But unfortunately, the conditions are not just there to discuss in the European Parliament about the investment agreement. Because, as you know, the European Parliament, some of our colleagues and subcommittee for human rights in the European Parliament has been subjected last March to political sanctions. This is something that is unacceptable for us, and we stand in solidarity in the European Parliament, telling that we cannot discuss the investment agreement until the sanctions are in place.
Mr. Ostrovicius, your point of view on that investment pact, should it be stopped?
I think we have to revise this investment pact, which is, I agree, is needed because, I mean, two economic giants, as you rightly said, have to find equal grounds for cooperation. I mean, and that cooperation will be for really benefits of us and global community. But that cooperation should be very symmetric and, reflecting probably equal rights and opportunities. If you look at the agreement which was negotiated and a bit overpushed, I have to admit, by the German presidency in very end of its presidency in December, I think it's not really reflecting the situation what we've been looking for. And probably China is trying to explore this situation and to build up its, upper hand, a kind of the superior position towards the European Union. We have to take into account, equal opportunities, opening up public procurement, for example, areas for cooperation, and not imposing one-side rules on this agreement. So that's why we need this agreement, but I am sure we have a chance to improve it.
Mr. Ostrovicius, just coming back to you, as I mentioned, Lithuania joining this diplomatic boycott of the Winter Olympics. Some might ask, though, how big of an act that is, how meaningful, and are there indeed other tools, other paths that you might want to have explored by the EU as a whole?
I'm a supporter of our cooperation with China, but a new strategy on which the European Parliament made a very clear line in summer last year, that this strategy, EU-China cooperation strategy, should be based not just on economic cooperation and not just on business interests, which I admit exist on both sides, but on fundamental values. So that's why, for me, it's at most important to send the right signal to the Chinese authorities and to the Chinese leadership that our opinion about the human rights, about the Uyghurs, is not something which we might neglect and forget. So that's why a mild reminder to the Chinese authorities about the importance of the rule of law and human rights, as well as equal opportunities to everybody, is to be sent probably even through the boycott of the Winter Olympic Games to be organized in China this year. So that's why it's very symbolic but very powerful reminding point.
I'm just wondering, Mr. Winkler, given the comparative economic power of China and of the EU, if you're worried about consequences for the EU if the EU as a whole takes stronger action or a stronger position regarding China?
Look, it's not about worry, but it's about being very clear of our objectives. And I would say that the European Union has two categories of objectives. We, of course, have economic reasons, and we have the need for level playing field. We have the need to protect European companies present on the Chinese market. By the other hand, the European Union is not only a union of interests, but it is also a union of values. So our values, which we claim to be universal values about freedom, about democracy, about human rights, about the freedom of speech and so on, those are values that are contested and are not understood in the same way by China. China is a different society, and the words, the notions, the fundamental words meaning is very different in China. They say democracy is not the unilateral propriety of the Western liberal democracies. They are also a democratic nation. They also speak about freedom of speech, and they speak about human rights, but in a very different terms. So we should be, of course, attached always to our values. I think I just said it, that the European Parliament cannot discuss about the investment agreement until the European Parliament's members are under political sanctions from China. So this is that, yes, our interests are very important. Those are the interests of European companies. So fundamentally, they are the interests of European citizens. But of course, the interests always come hand in hand with values and with our very clear attachment to democracy and human rights as we interpret those notions universally.
All right, thanks very much to both of you. We are out of time, but thanks for this discussion, Mr. Winkler and Mr. Ostrovicius. Thanks to you as well for watching. Hope to see you soon here on Talking Europe.